So one of the questions I've been looking at a lot lately is the neurobiology of the Bannister effect, right? What is it about believing that the impossible is possible that suddenly makes it much more possible for a lot of people? And a lot of the work that's been gone on in memory recently says, this was 10 years ago, we discovered that episodic memory, right? Our ability to remember episodes, those are part of the ingredients of how we imagine the future. New work is like, okay, you also have semantic memory that usually inflicts. But my point is that the Bannister effect is some version of that, meaning there's an upper limit to the possibility we think is possible, right? And it's governed. Some of it's semantic memory, some of it's episodic memory, some of it is something we have not yet figured out. But we know that this limit exists. And my question, or what I'm kind of poking at, is there's a realistic optimism limit that is probably somewhat related neurobiologically, when we get it all said and done, to how the Bannister limit is also set. And it's probably some combination of memories plus something we're not looking at. But it's a really interesting puzzle, which is like, how optimistic can you be, before you start triggering, people's bullshit detectors?
And like, I'm very interested to get your point of view on this, which is, you also run up against physics, or biology.
Yes.
When the fastest person ran a 7-minute mile, whenever that was, and then, then it was 6 minutes, then it was 5 minutes, and Roger Bannister saying, well, I'm going to do it in 4, and, clearly the biology will not allow us to run a mile in a minute.
Yeah, well, we know if 24 miles an hour is top speed, everything else aside, there's a physics to this. Yeah.
My question for you is like, at some point, the Bannister effect stops. It has a limit, and then you're dealing in hundredths of seconds.
Here's the thing, I think. You're thinking about the Bannister effect as a finite game inside a particular thing. I'm running, and I'm trying to beat it. And inside of those things, I think there are hard laws of physics. I think the more interesting Bannister effects that we play with are where you're not running into hard laws of physics. But I will also say, we didn't think we could fly. There were laws of physics that say human beings couldn't, and we use technologies to get around the laws of physics at times. So yes, there are certain, when you really bound it and it's that finite, yes, it runs up against the limit. But if you're playing a more infinite game where you can bring other things to the problem, if you've expanded the problem space, I don't necessarily know if this laws of physics work in the same way. Which is not to say that you're going to violate the laws of physics. You'll just find a damn workaround.
I think the nuance that is valuable in that we have to use is the difference between impossible and improbable. Like, it's impossible to run a mile in 4 minutes. No, it's improbable that we can run a mile in 4 minutes. And I think we overuse the word impossible, and it's those who push boundaries and innovate that see things more as improbable.
Funny anecdote. Laird Hamilton was once talking to me about the day he surfed the Millennium Wave at Chopu, right, which was the biggest wave change surfing history. It was insane. And one of the reasons he paddled out is because he was on the beach, and one of the Tahitian guys was like, yeah, man, when it's like this, we don't go out. And Laird said to me, he's like, when you talk to a guy like me and I hear the word never, and I think, you're lying to me. There's a secret that you don't want to tell me, and it just makes me want to go out. Like, he doesn't hear impossible. He hears, oh no, dude, this is when guys like you should go, right? Like, literally doesn't even hear the language that way. And I always point out that the view, this is another Laird Hamilton story, but it's relevant here. The view is different on the inside than the outside. The point that Laird was talking, when I first met him, this conversation took place, he was like 31 years old. He had just started towing into Jaws, and nobody had ever seen anything like it. And he said, Stephen, people see me on a wave. They think, oh, dude, that's impossible. There's no way, Laird, I could never do that. And they see me, I'm 31 years old. And what they don't realize is that I was on a 3-foot wave at 3 years old, on a 4-foot wave at 4 years old, on a 5-foot wave at 5 years old. And last week, I was on a 49.5-foot wave. So they see me on a 50-foot wave and they think, oh, dude, that's impossible. And to me, I'm thinking, Laird, you're not even pushing very hard. Last week, you went 49.5 feet. So I always say that the view of what is impossible is very different on the inside than on the outside. And we have pattern recognition systems for brains. So we see something like that, and the brain goes, well, now imagine yourself doing that, not imagining, right?
And Roger Bannister was running faster and faster and faster and faster. He didn't start at 7 minutes.
Well, and let me add to that, because I think this is something I was thinking about as you both talked, is that I think the difference between impossible and improbable often has to do with the delta between A and B, right? I mean, if you look at the 4-minute mile for someone 200 years ago, when the fastest mile that had been run was 7 minutes, that's a 3-minute delta. Whereas Roger Bannister, I don't know what the fastest time he beat was, but that delta wasn't as big. And so these incremental changes we make as humans, who knows if we can run a 1-minute mile? In 500 years, maybe humans will be running a 1-minute mile because maybe the delta will have decreased. And so impossible seems impossible when the A to B delta is really huge. It gets to be improbable when the delta becomes smaller. And that's how we evolve. It's all in increments.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.